Okay, so in this hallway, actually, or in this gallery, I should say, there are two exhibits that I want to mention. First is this mural, which is called From Africa to America. This is done by an artist, a local painter named Wilfred Stroud. And he was actually, the museum actually hired, Wilfred Stroud was a painter, he was a musician, he was a jazz musician, he was a composer, he was a teacher, and the museum hired him back in 1988 to do a work of art that would help us to tell stories about Black history, Black culture, local stories as well as national, international stories about Black history and Black culture. And this is what he came up with. He started working on the painting back in 1988. That's when he was hired. He worked on it all the way up through 2009. It is 9 panels, 9 individual panels pushed together to tell one historical story that starts behind me back here with images of traditional African culture, traditional African history prior to any communication with the West. And it works its way historically down the hallway to the election of the first Black president of the United States. Each panel is kind of a different era in that history, and he tells the stories about the era, or the selected stories about that era in time by doing portraits, a lot of portraits of individuals who made significant contributions to Black culture, American history at that time. So there's lots and lots of portraits that are part of it, part of the mural, and running along the floor underneath it is a picture key, kind of numbered picture key. So if you're looking at, looking at the mural and you have a question about this image or that image or this portrait or that portrait, you can kind of look down and see the number that's on the key, and then read a little bit about the person, read a little bit about the incident or whatever is depicted up here. So the first 7 panels of it were completed in that initial commission in 1988. He came back in 1996 and did an 8th panel. That one's on the end there. It has Colin Powell in the center of it. And then in 2009, he came back and did the 9th and final, as it turns out, the final panel that has the Obamas in the center, the first Black president of the United States. And that's where the story, as far as the From Africa to America mural, ends. On the other side of me, my right side, we have an exhibit about Black inventors. It's called From the Minds of African Americans. And it tells a story, or tells stories, I should say, about Black inventors, different Black inventors, and the technology and the things that they invented. And there's about 25 or so objects that are a part of this exhibit. That's kind of a tiny fraction, really, of what has been created by African American inventors over time. So it's kind of a sample, I guess, of what Black inventors have contributed, and it's a mix of more antique objects and some contemporary objects. Because we have young audiences that come in, we also have older audiences that come in, and they kind of relate to different aspects of it. But in addition to just giving you a kind of a list of who the Black inventors were, or who some of the Black inventors were, I should say, or some of the things that they invented, there's also a cultural value in this exhibit, because it gives the viewer, the person that comes in, just a sense of the kind of contributions that Black scientists, Black engineers, Black entrepreneurs have made to everyday life in America. I mean, everybody's everyday life in America has been impacted positively by the work of African American inventors. You come in here, you get to see how many of the everyday objects that you use in your life every day and never really thought twice about come to us from the minds of African Americans. And so there's a cultural value in that as well. And like I said, this is a fairly small exhibit when you think about that contribution, or the size or scope of that contribution. But we also have a book that we created that sits in the exhibit that just gives you a much longer list of who the inventors are and who the inventors were, and the technology that they contributed to society. And what's also cool about that is you can look at a contemporary object, like say a mixing bowl or something like that, and you can trace its origins back to the original patent application and the patent drawing for the original technology that has evolved over time to become the mixing bowl that the electric mixing bowl that you're familiar with. So that's a cool thing too. You can see how technology evolves as well. So it's a really cool exhibit. Older people like it, younger people like it for different reasons. And it's a way for those two generations to kind of connect, the pre-technology generation and the post-technology generation to connect. So that's another value or another thing that we see happening in this space as well. But yeah, so this is From the Minds of African Americans, the Black Inventors exhibit. This is From Africa to America, which is a very important mural by a local artist named Wilfred Stroud. So hopefully you guys will come out and see both when you come to the museum. Okay, so we have moved down to the other end of the From Africa to America mural. And hopefully that'll help you guys get a sense of the scale of it. When we moved into this building in 2015, it was the first time we were actually able to exhibit the panels, pushed together as they are supposed to be viewed. And it's pretty large single work of art, so hopefully you get a sense of that. This is our artist here, Wilfred Stroud, like I said, who was a local painter, musician, and teacher. So you get a sense of him actually sitting in front of the work that he created. And the other thing I wanted to mention is this book. I mentioned this book when we were standing down at that end of the gallery, and how one of the things that it allows us to do is give people a sense of how technology evolves. Like, for example, right across from me, there's a picture of an electric mixing bowl. And then you can go from that contemporary piece of technology that people are familiar with back to this hand-cranked egg beater, which was invented by Willis Johnson in 1884, and get a sense of, okay, how this handheld device evolved into that electronic device. And like I said, it's a link between the kind of pre-technology generation and post-technology generation. They see things like the ice cream scoop or the insect destroyer that's on that side of the wall. And they identify with those things because they're things that they saw when they were young. And the young people will see things like the Super Soaker water gun. And that's something that they identify with because that's what they remember when they were kids. They played with that toy. So it links those generations. And things like the Super Soaker are also cool because its origin is local. The inventor for that toy is a guy named Lonnie Johnson who lives in Marietta, Georgia. He's not from Georgia, he's from Florida, but he lives in Marietta, Georgia, and has a research and development company here in Marietta, Georgia. But is a really cool, interesting guy, brilliant man who was involved in the space program or the astronaut program with NASA, developed technology for exploring space, but also invented this toy that everybody is familiar with. So there are a lot of connections between young and old, between generations, and that are really interesting and that come out when people are in this space. And like I said, those are values too. It's not just listing of artifacts and objects, but it's the cultural value and the social value of these exhibits that are important as well. So hopefully you guys, when you come here, will take the opportunity to take a look at our Black Inventors exhibit, which is called From the Minds of African Americans, and also our Black History mural, which is called From Africa to America. Thank you.